couldn't participate, but we have a quorum here, so this is an official meeting. First item on the agenda is item 2.2, 2.3 for the board's review. Item 2.2 is to extend the spring break due to the COVID-19 virus beyond what the state governor has suggested of us going back to school, and also to discuss item 2.3, the payment of hourly salary workers and for all employees of the school to continue the payment for them. Is that right, Dr. Wright?
Yes, and the first item is just to approve the agenda given as a special board meeting.
Do we have any discussion from any of the board members in regard to this? We'll pass, you don't have to, I don't think anybody that can't hear. Anyway, it is Chuck.
We're talking about 2.2.
2.2, I think we'll combine 2.2, 2.3 together, do this discussion, and then we'll do motions. And
The first one, Mr. President, is just to approve the board agenda and then to go down to the items 2.2 and 2.3.
I understand. So we have a motion to approve item 2.1, which is to just to discuss and then possibly approve those items 2.2 and 2.1. I have a motion from Diana, and a second from Chuck. All in favor? Yes. Okay. We've passed motion 2.1. Now, item 2.2 and 2.3 we'll discuss together if that's all right. And then we'll make motions and vote on those separately. So item 2.2 is to basically, if I understand this, Dr. Wright, just leave this open-ended. The closure of the school, just kind of leave it open-ended until possibly this is under control, in case we have to go further than what we had originally planned. Chuck?
What is the process or procedure for determining when to go back in session?
We would follow along with whatever the state is going to determine, but we would not have to reconvene to have another board meeting to accept that item. We would just accept that we would be closed until the next school year if it went that long. What I'm hearing from the state is it might extend another month beyond what the 2 weeks they anticipated. And so we would just, in lockstep with the state, if the state said that, the closure was over and we did not have a significant number of incidents in our own schools or communities, we would just resume. However, if we have confirmed cases of students or staff inside our community, then we could remain closed if the board so decided. You could always have another special board meeting if you wanted to take it whatever direction necessary.
Well, I'm just thinking the scenario, if the state says, okay, we're going to schools again, what is the process for us? We may have special circumstances where we think we need to stay closed longer. In that case, what procedure are we going to use to do that?
If you follow this board item, you could remain closed because the board is given authorization to remain closed until it is deemed safe to resume normal school operations.
Okay, so what we're saying is if the state says, okay, you can open up school again, then if you feel that we need to stay closed, then we need to have a board meeting to determine that. That's what we're saying.
We wouldn't have to. We wouldn't have to. We could remain closed.
Just based on this item.
Yes, sir.
Second question is, what happens about seniors at graduation if we don't go back in session?
We don't have the answer to that yet. The state is still working through some of those requirements as well, state assessments, how to handle graduation. We don't have those answers yet. We will be working towards solutions for those. If we were closed, we would not have a large congregation. We would have to figure out how to graduate our kids either virtually or postpone that ceremony until such time it was deemed safe. However, the diplomas and the formal side of that in terms of the paperwork side would be completed. They would be able to matriculate in the event colleges were open to receive kids.
Because my concern is that the seniors, because we're on a block schedule, they will basically miss the last quarter of the school year and half of the 4 courses they're taking. So we would just go ahead and graduate them, consider it done.
The ADE is looking into that. They're asking all the same questions that you are. These are good questions. And the Arizona Department of Education is going through all of those things. We're going to have weekly phone calls and access to webinars to help guide us through some of these things in the event it is a prolonged closure. Graduation doesn't take place as it normally would, meaning no commencement ceremonies. How do we proceed? We are also looking at internet-based solutions and curriculum with an emphasis on high school students because of that fact, and seniors, because we recognize there's instruction that must occur in order for them to qualify. And so those are all those things that we're talking about.
My question, how much more is it going to take for us to make things available on the internet, lesson plans, so kids can keep up? If we have to go that long, how much is that going to take for us to get it in gear for that?
We're meeting individually right now. We're meeting virtually, rather, with the administrators and key staff members, department heads and chairs to try to determine what instructional material could be made available immediately. At the elementary level, they're putting together physical packets, which would be distributed with food and otherwise. At the high school level, it would be a little bit easier to have some online or virtual learning occur, but we're trying to work through how we would sort of pick up where they are now for each and the various classes in which they're in to make sure that the instruction continues. We don't have any of those answers right now. We're meeting independently and virtually this week, and the team will have a conference call next week, all the principals, everybody in the executive team, to flush some of that out. I guess my short answer would, we wouldn't know the answer to that for at least another couple of weeks. However, we do have resources in place because of the bond that we passed in 2016. There are Surface tablets available for student use that we could send home if we chose to do that. We would need to make sure, though, that they had the infrastructure. We're trying to determine who has internet. And right now, to our best guess, about 75% do, 25% do not. So then we're trying to figure out, how do we provide services for those that do not have internet? How can we create hotspots? And then how will we deliver the technology and those kinds of things? Did that answer your question, Mr. President? Is that Dave?
Regarding the lunches, I think an email you sent us, you mentioned the possibility of delivering lunches to White River and kids that are not open at home. I can see that listed in this information. Are we still trying to do that?
Yes, so the question is, how do we make sure or ensure that the children on free and reduced open enrollment and in-district are receive support? We have been working with the tribe. Mr. Pico has been working with Chairwoman Gwendina Realbird of Fort Apache to make sure that those children have a central meeting point. A point has been identified. I think it's the church parking lot where the kids are currently picked up. We will be delivering about 200 lunches there Monday through Friday. There's also an area in McNary in which lunches will be delivered, and Brad Pico's arranging that as well. Here for in-district kids or kids from anywhere, 18 years old and younger, students or non-students, can pick up a lunch at Brez drive-through on the back bus lane. So we are anticipating 500 lunches or so daily? 550? Okay. Breakfast and lunch, we're going to be serving both meals at one time in a brown bag.
I had a question. It seemed important when I thought of it, but then I forgot it. I don't have an answer. Sorry. So I think we are ready to vote on item 2.2. Oh, the question was, since we're going to discuss both 2.2 and 2.3 at the same time, because I think they're probably, my question is, how long will we be able to provide paid wages?
Through
Hourly
the,
salaries
a good
and
question.
stuff? How long can we do that?
we currently have it budgeted through the current school year. I don't think we can do it beyond that statutorily, but
So we are covered through the end of the school year.
we're covered through the end of this school year because we already have that budget.
Right.
But beyond that, school would be out of session anyway. We wouldn't be compensating anyone other than those that are on contract, that are administrators, and they would continue to work. Mr. Wall, go ahead.
Are we going to receive any type of compensation from the state, do you think, to help us with any of these problems we're trying to overcome?
As I understand it, the state is making an application to the federal government. This won't be an additional financial burden for us. It would just be as if we were operating anyway. Mr. Waldo had a question.
I was just gonna say, more succinctly, all staff members will receive the regular paycheck just like they would if we were in session through the end of their contract.
That's correct.
All right, so we're ready for a motion for item 2.2. We have a motion. Check motion in a second. Diana, all in favor? Okay, item 2.2 has been passed. Item 2.3, which is the financial aspect of what we've been talking to. Any more conversation about that? Does anybody, you need to provide any more information to us with that?
I will only provide this, that some districts are struggling with gift of public funds. This is not a gift of public funds. The statute simply says that the action must be of benefit to the district. Most certainly is. The benefit we're receiving is employee retention, and also it enhances employee morale. We have already checked with our legal on that, and it has been confirmed that is correct, and we are statutorily able to provide this compensation. Setting all that aside, it's the right thing to do.
Any questions on that? I think it is the right thing to do. Chuck?
Well, I'm just gonna comment like this, in a way, we will save some money. We've been paying substitutes, we've been paying as much for utilities and fuel for buses and that kind of stuff.
Or sports?
Yeah.
I did see that the AIA plans on having the spring championships as of now. In other words, tournaments as of now, but that probably, if this prolonged, that probably put off too.
Yeah. So just to be clear, as a part of item 2.2, because it's on the agenda so I can speak to it, all school activities, including athletics, music, field trips, clubs, meetings, congregations, all of those things will cease as a part of this board agenda item. And as far as the compensation side, the one part I wanted to add, there is a potential that school wouldn't start on time. In the event that occurred, we're also preparing to have education delivered virtually and also to specific centers of points to deliver information. And so we do have some time to get ahead of that. So we're not assuming school is going to start on time. We hope that it does, but in the event it doesn't, we want to be prepared. And so those changes are being made now. In terms of the employee and how we would staff that, I don't know yet. We're still working through that as well. So we'll learn a lot through the Arizona Department of Ed and other governing bodies within these next few weeks, certainly the next month. We'll have a much clearer view. Mr. Waldo.
Question about the trips that we approved, did the fire go?
They did and they have returned. They did and returned.
And what about the, APLAP group?
That has been canceled. That event has been canceled. If they have it, it'll be virtually. But no other field trips or other trips will leave until further notice.
Washington DC trip?
Up and back. In New York, they've been already back.
I was just wondering where we were with all that.
Yes, sir. All of the students that have been sent out or now have returned.
I can't have another question. I keep listening. Is there with regards to sports, AIA said they were going to have spring tournaments if everything worked out and came back, but if not, it's through. Everybody's through. Hopefully this ends in another couple of weeks and life can get back to normal. But if not, it looks like it might even affect the beginning of school next year, right?
It could.
Good, possible. All right, any other questions regarding 2.3 financial aspect of this? If not so, can we have a motion? Have a motion from Chuck and a second from Diana. All in favor? Yes, thank you. Since this is pretty much an emergency school board meeting that they normally call the public will not be honored today, just have a motion to adjourn. Motion from Chuck, second, all in favor of adjournment? We're adjourned, thank you.
If at least one school board member wants to leave, then I can go ahead and address questions to the public, because now it's just an open meeting, it's not a school board meeting.
You know, I need to go back to work.
Okay.
I'll do that. So we won't have a quorum here.
So when Mr. Merrill exits, if any of you in the audience have questions that you want to have answered or concerns, I can speak about those as openly as you wish, even if they're not on this agenda, because this is just a gathering of people. Okay, yeah. Thank you, Mr. Merrill. Are there any questions either from individual parents, PTSO, just community members, anything that any of you have that want to be addressed or you wish to be addressed? Yes, if we had a way, if we can work through trying to identify who those folks are, then we would be glad to do that. We'd be glad to give that food, because that was been one of our concerns is the weekend. How do we distribute that? Thank you for that, Brittany. Yes, ma'am.
I distribute that food to the person, and I have a list of every student.
Outstanding. It is, and then what we will say for those students receiving backpacks for the weekend, they'll be distributed through the resource center, family resource center at the elementary. Yeah. Yeah, maybe if we could find a way to get them, like we do the kindergartners have a sticker in their car, but just have something where we could identify who gets it. Yes, okay, thank you, we appreciate that. Yes, ma'am. Right. 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 I would prepare as if it were going to go forward, looking optimistically, and in the event that it doesn't, they have resources for the next year. They're pretty much done. But not having that crystal ball, I don't know. And I would say that I don't get my news off of talk shows and the TV. I'm talking about medical journals, and the experts are suggesting this could be a protracted problem, and it's just starting to take hold. However, if certain steps are taken and this social distancing is taken seriously, the curve of the infection could be stemmed significantly. So a lot of it depends on how we respond. But I think that's going to be the safest path, is have them continue. We're going to continue just operationally, like we're going to be open in 2 or 3 weeks. But if we're not, we'll have plans in place to go beyond that. Yes. Okay, it's a good question, so I'll repeat it to make sure everybody heard. The question was, what does the remainder of the year look like for all the students? For instance, her daughter's a sophomore. Are we going to just write it off and just, that's the end of the year, or are we going to try to make it up in the summer? The answer right now is I don't know. I would think that the Department of Ed is going to give us a lot of definitive answers here in the next couple of weeks. That same question was posed along with, what about state assessments? What about Arizona Merit? What about graduation? a lot of that is still up in the air. Within the next 2 weeks, our administration team will continue to meet virtually and will participate in these webinars are almost daily. And so we're trying to stay ahead of it as much as we can. I'll continue to send out at least weekly updates to the broader community using our emergency communication platforms, social media, text messages, all call, website, and email to try to keep the parents and everyone else informed. Those of you, Ms. Brittany, and if we can have email for people, if you want to be added to that, if your email's not on it, just email mforward@brusd and we'll include you with those as well to make sure you have the information you need.
So if I use it for 550, right? So if it is not something that you have, you may that's a very next one, which is the way you want to do it, but they don't get a lot of this, that's just they don't have transportation. So if that 550, if you're not seeing anywhere close to that, is there a plan to like we send it out by the bus routes or get it to kids closer to their house, or is there
We will monitor and adjust. I don't want to use the bus stop because it just creates crowds of kids. But we would look to expand our distribution points if it looks like we need to. We certainly would and will. Don't know yet. I don't know yet. I'm assuming because it's a broad base crisis, the state is just going to say, we're going to forgive those hours of instruction. We're going to pick up wherever we are and get kids prepared for finals. That'd be my guess, Mr. Bill. Are there any other questions? Well, thank you for coming out. I appreciate it. This has been streamed. It'll be on our website immediately after the meeting. And so if you want to get that word out, we'll use our same communication path of social media, text, email, and all call to make sure people know this is available. Thanks for coming. Thank you, workers. We appreciate you. Thank you, Brenda and Mary. Thank you, Barb. Nice job getting everything together.